Welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network, coming to you from the TeacherCast studios since 2011. Join us each week as we bring you the latest educational news, EdTech updates, and hottest interviews with today's most influential leaders in education. And now, for your host, Jeff Bradbury.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today and making TeacherCast your home for professional development. This is TeacherCast podcast episode number 222, and today we're going to take a look at digital learning from a slightly different point of view, an overseas point of view. I have a fantastic guest today. He's the CEO of Impero Software. I want to bring on to the show today Mr. Justin Reilly. Justin, how are you today? Welcome to TeacherCast.
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing extremely well, but I gotta say, like every other educator here in the States, I'm a little worried about what's going on. I'm nervous. We were talking earlier about, the fact that when we're looking at this whole COVID trend, when we're looking at hybrid learning, digital learning, it's not going in the right direction, at least here. What are you guys seeing over in England?
Very, very much the same thing. I think, given we were in a second lockdown, so I don't know if you remember or recall, but there was the first lockdown that came in at March, and for an organisation like mine that works exclusively in education technology across the world, we were watching every single education market turn off one after another. It was bizarre. In the space of 2 weeks, we went from everything to nothing. We're in the second lockdown now, and whilst the schools are being kept open, there's a lot of fear around the fact that they seem to be a space where COVID is being transmitted. It's creating its own risks. So I think there's a genuine fear amongst teachers that they're in frontline services, essentially. And whilst they are essential services, that does put them in a position of risk. If I look at my two eldest children, 15-year-old, 17-year-old, my 15-year-old has been told he has to stay at home in isolation because he was sat next to somebody that had COVID. My 17-year-old is okay to go back to school, but the year below him is in a bubble and they've been all sent home. So we've got this sort of, there is no consistency. And as a teacher, and you can imagine trying to deal with not knowing on Monday who's going to be in front of you or where they're going to be. That's a tough place to be.
As we're sitting here talking about COVID, we want to hear from you guys. Of course, you can reach out to the show every single day over on Twitter. You can go to twitter.com/TeacherCast. Love to hear from you guys. And of course, you can always reach out to us over at teachercast.net/feedback. Would love to hear where you guys are. Justin, as we're looking at this, you had mentioned consistency. And I know in my position as a technology trainer at a district level, we got 13,000 students. It's not an easy pivot, right? I mean, you got high school kids, middle school kids that, yes, they're used to right now going from hybrid to full to virtual they've done this before. Not that it's easy, but I've been focusing a lot over the last couple of weeks on those younger grades, the kindergartners, the first and second graders, where you're not just pivoting, you're changing a parent's lifestyle. How is that working over in your country?
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, having two small children myself, when you see those children coming home, they can prevent you from working. So there's additional pressure upon the parents. I think whilst, you are talking about adolescents and teenagers potentially being self-sustaining self-learners, actually, I'm not sure that's the case, if I'm honest. But certainly when you get into kindergarten, you get into the younger years, they're not self-motivated learners. Of course they're not. They're children. They're very much at the epicenter of that. And it's a real risk, right? Because the formative years of education, that's where your literacy and numeracy is really going to be embedded. That's where you're going to be putting the axiomatic conceptual understanding of really core topics. And if they're not practicing those and consolidating those in a structured environment, then that's going to be causing all sorts of problems down the line. It has a cascade problem sort of through the generations. It's going to take years to work our way through that. As a parent, to suddenly expect you to be a professional teacher or tutor to plug the gap, that's quite hard. Particularly if you're trying to run a full-time job.
It certainly is. I mean, everybody knows, I have 7-year-old triplets at home where they're kindergarten last year, first grade this year. Luckily, we haven't had any problems in their particular school, but every other school in the district has been affected by it. So we're just kind of waiting for things to happen here. It's not easy, right? I mean, you're trying to not only teach curriculum to students, you're trying to teach digital technology to students, but suddenly the parents have to know how to log into the classrooms and the seesaws and the teams and all of those things. What advice as an EdTech company do you have when working with parents who stress doesn't even begin to sum up what their life must be like these days?
I think there is a little bit of parents should be involved in education anyway, right? So there's parental engagement and there's parental involvement, and they're two different things. Engagement being sort of keeping an eye on what's happening within the classroom, what's happening with their own children and how they're developing. Involvement being exactly that. You're actually directly involved in what's happening within the lesson and the structure of the lesson. We've thrust an entire generation of parents into parental involvement. And I'm not seeing an awful lot of guidance or support coming out from any central government. And I'm talking globally. I'm not just talking within the US and the UK. There doesn't seem to be the same scale of support that one would like to see to help them to cope with that. Now, where did they go to get that? So I'm a teacher, you're a teacher, we've got a background in the classroom, we understand. But even so, teaching your own children on subject matter that you perhaps aren't quite so familiar with is entirely different to expecting them to go and learn something on a subject matter that you're comfortable with. It is different. So I guess my first and best advice would be get comfortable with the curriculum matter, particularly if it's younger children, understand the subject matter, be comfortable asking questions, and obviously reach out to the teachers and other parents to get advice. We're not doing this alone. It feels like it, but we're not in this alone. We're all going through the same situation.
It's really about building that community, right? We talk about it in the teaching space of building a PLC or a PLN, but really one of the things that I know our district is focused on is parent engagement, community engagement. We even created something called Parent University, where it's teachers helping parents understand things. We're bringing in other EdTech companies to teach how are they using their applications in the classroom, just to kind of ease the burden of parents needing to know everything. What are some of the things that a school district can do in your mind to help out, ease that tension in the community, bring people together? Is it a resource? Is it a video channel? Is it virtual face-to-face? Like, what do you suggest? How do we bring in the parents here to keep everybody together?
It's a little bit of all the above, isn't it? Because there's definitely a need for some immediacy, a chat facility or working through a learning platform of some description, where if a parent is struggling with a particular topic, then contact straight away, ask the question, get the immediate answer, go and support that. So we certainly advocate live chat as being one of those mediums. We provide a combination of wellbeing software, but also classroom management software, and ours is deliberately designed to be entirely remote. Now, there's other packages out there that do the same thing. We would strongly recommend the districts investing in remote learning, because then you can have a combination of the teacher delivering live lessons with the parent taking almost a learning support assistant role. That's a much more comfortable place to be. And that really releases the power of parental involvement, as we were talking earlier. Having the teacher leading the lesson, but with the parent involved in the background. Those sort of things I think are really powerful. And also give people sight of the curriculum. One of the things that I've noticed, and it might be a personal experience more than a global one, but we don't get to see the curriculum that our children are going through, and we don't get to see the detail behind that curriculum very often. It tends to be very thematic rather than we're doing volcanoes, we're doing Romans, But actually, what is it we're learning within that, and what can I do to include that in general conversation? The idea of a structured lesson is sort of dissolving somewhat, because it's not a bad idea to be able to bring these conversations to the dinner table if you're going for a walk, or and I think some of the really good lessons that I've heard about and really good experiences I've heard about have been where teachers have been providing materials to parents to enable them to stimulate the conversation elsewhere. If you're going for a walk with the dog, take the children with you, talk about what's going on, what do you observe, shapes, whatever it might be. Those sorts of things can be really powerful, and very engaging for the parent as well, and certainly less threatening.
I love the less threatening angle of that, because one of the things that we're working on in our district is just the struggle for, do we pull the trigger and take everybody offline? Do we stay in? One of the things that I think all school districts are realizing is that the virus is spreading not in class, but it's spreading at home with people getting together. I mean, there's campaigns all over the country right now of, be aware that Thanksgiving is coming up. Don't bring 100 people into your house. It's just going to not be good over the next couple weeks. Yeah. We really are trying to say to our students here, at least in my district, that the safest place sometimes is in the classroom, because it is a controlled environment. But when it comes to this, we have these issues of what happens when students are at home. We have bullying, We have students getting together. We have students not actively engaging in classrooms. We have all these social and emotional. Talk to us a little bit about some of the work that you guys are doing, especially, and we'll get into the work that you're doing with Impero, but why is it important to be considering student health, student well-being, student activity and engagement when it comes to making these difficult decisions about COVID and instructional learning?
If we sort of step it back a little bit, if you asked any teacher or any parent, is a child's well-being going to influence their attainment and their success in the classroom and learning? Nobody would question that the two are intrinsically linked. Clearly they are. And if you ask the reverse question, is their attainment directly sort of in some ways influencing their well-being? Yeah, absolutely. Of course it is. We know that's the case, right? That's intrinsically there. What we've done is try to take those two really clear concepts and combine them into one platform. So we have the digital protection, the manual captures and observations sitting alongside our classroom management and remote learning functionality, so that we're bringing the two together to flag to teachers and parents wherever it might be, where the issues are. What we know from a well-being point of view is that teachers' role within understanding the well-being of a child has been extremely misunderstood. When we went into the first lockdown here in the UK, we saw 60% of captures disappear overnight. Now, they could be captures around safe harm, radicalization, isolation, depression, you name the topic, it's there and we're looking after it. And I have to say, this is not just us, that there are other organizations doing the same thing who have spotted similar sorts of results. But what it meant was that the teachers were providing a really important lens through which to observe the well-being of a child. Not in isolation, obviously, they're not the only people doing that. But that lens suddenly disappeared overnight. And what we need to get back to is teachers finding ways to observe the well-being of children, to look at how they are and what they're doing, to understand that by suddenly forcing them into a digital environment, you're actually exposing them to a significant number of other risks as well, and you've got to control those risks. That's going to have an impact on their well-being. That's going to have an impact on their attainment eventually. And obviously, we need to be sort of mapping all those things together. So I think the big observations for me really is that we mustn't underestimate the impact that teachers will have in keeping the children safe, even if they're in a hybrid environment or if all the children are at home remote learning. That role is still there, and we need to understand how to enable teachers to keep fulfilling that role.
Let's talk a little bit about Impero just for a quick second here. There are a lot of school districts right now, both large and small, that are looking for a partner, looking for a solution. Give us the quick rundown here. What is Impero? How is it helping school districts?
So we've got three strands to our products. And I should say, when I took over the business about 16 months ago, I started a transformation to take and rebuild our platform out completely. But principally, for the last 20 years, we've been providing network management tools. So giving tools to people to enable them to manage networks in a pretty seamless and manageable way, because we can't all be high-end Cisco engineers. We need to respect the balance of what's going on in schools. And there's an ever-increasing sophistication of the technology within schools, so we need to make it easier to manage that estate. Second to that is classroom management, which is, if you think historically, you would have a horseshoe shape of computers within a classroom lab, and you would either see the backs of children's heads and the screens, or you saw the faces of the children, which is really important for that question and answering and teaching and learning piece, but you didn't see the monitors. What we did is started to combine the two. So on one teacher device, you could observe everything that's happening real time on every single other device. That's the classroom management piece. We've taken that a step further, that we're also observing not what's just happening on that screen, but everything that's happening behind it. So we know other tabs that are open. We know if they're running YouTube in the background. We know if they're Googling things that they shouldn't be Googling whilst in that environment. We've recognized that if they're studying something on a digital resource, education resource, we know how long they're spending on activities within that, and we know everything else they're doing at the same time. So it gives us a really good holistic view of what they're doing. That also evolved over to digital protection. So where we're monitoring what they're doing and we're spotting keywords. We have about 27,500 keywords that we're monitoring for all the time, non-stop, to see whether the triggers, and it's how those words are being used that are really important as well, to understand if there's a genuine sort of case of concern that we should be flagging to a teacher or a counsellor or another stakeholder. And it's worth noting, by the way, so we're around 27,000 keywords. the average adult has around a vocabulary of around 25,000. So, that gives you some sort of sense of just how many words we're observing. And we're covering all the topics you can possibly imagine. And we also, on top of that, then have our manual captures where teachers can record concerns that on observation. And we think bringing that into one environment is extremely important, because you may have a number of observations around comments you've seen from a child, or maybe a child that was being bullied, but it was light bullying in isolation, didn't look particularly serious. You put a concern in, and obviously over time, each child has a chronology, and you start to see whether actually there's something spotting, there's a trend coming, whether you should be more concerned perhaps the isolated incidents. And it's fed into from all the teachers and all the classes and all the environments as well. So you get a true holistic view of how safe those children are and what's going on in that environment. So we've specialized in taking all those three things and bringing them into one space, controlling the devices, allowing people to manage the devices, and looking at how those devices are being used, not just what you see, but also what's going on in the background and how that's influencing both the attainment and the well-being of the students. And it's that holistic view that we've been building out and are continuing to build out over the last 2 years or so.
If a school district's looking to bring Impero into their environment, what do they need to do? What should they have ready before they make that first reach out to you guys over at imperosoftware.com?
Well, really, we've deliberately gone down the route of saying that we're device agnostic. So as long as they have devices, we don't really mind what they are. And we've also gone down the road of whatever operating system you've got. We don't care what hardware you have. We don't care which of the 5 major operating systems you're working with, including Android. Use us. You can plug in, and all you really need to do is just contact us and get your school data ready so that we can sync to your SIS, download the client, and off you go. And it really is as simple as that.
Moving ahead, I think we're all looking forward to that day where COVID is not part of us, but we do have this environment where distant learning is still among us. I mean, even as right now we're looking at getting into the winter months, all the teachers are asking each other, if there's a snow day, do we just make it a hybrid day? Do we go in? What's the weather patterns look like? I mean, this really has opened up a lot of new possibilities to us. Where do you see 2021, 2022 like? I know we're into it's weird saying this in November, but we're into ISTE season. BET's going to be around the corner. As we look at all these EdTech companies, what do you see as the future of classroom technology and EdTech worldwide?
I think there's a definite continuation of moving to the cloud. I think we're going to see best of breed succeed in that from a technology point of view. A lot of people are moving to the cloud because everyone else is, so it's tick a box. But actually the true value of moving to the cloud is, as we said earlier, centralize your data, bring your data into a central data lake, and start analyzing it, because it's those trends and those insights that are truly going to shape what teachers are doing. And we have an entire work stream which is solely focused on pulling trends analysis out for teachers, for principals, for forever, superintendents, whatever. And I think we're going to see a lot of that going on. Clearly, any organization at the moment must be enabling their products to work in the cloud, but also to work in remote environments. So you shouldn't be focusing on delivering something that only works within the classroom. It has to work anywhere, anytime. So I think that there's going to be a bit of a cleansing around that, if you like, a bit of a purge in the marketplace to make sure that everybody's in that space as well. And I think, and this is where I think I get really excited, actually, there's going to be a lot more integration. You're going to see partners coming together. You're going to see learning platform providers or LMS providers teaming up much more with the SIS providers and assessment engines and digital content, because you can't have that managed by a teacher in a classroom if everybody is in 30 different locations. We've got to take that pain away. We've got to make sure that it's really easy for teachers and parents, whoever it might be, to access that same bit of technology. So I think we're going to see a big push towards organizations with very different technologies coming together to provide a sort of a unique but coherent solution.
It's interesting to see where the trend has gone. I remember a couple of years ago at ISTE, it was, hi, here's my company, and I do these 35 things. And then a couple of years later, it's, hi, here's my company, and I interact with 35 different other companies. You said the student information systems, the learning management systems. It is really nice to see people are really digging in and saying, we do this well, and we're giving a hug to Microsoft. We're giving a hug to Google. We're giving a hug to Clever, all these different places out there. Where do you see your company going in the next couple of years? I mean, obviously right now, the big thing is this monitoring software, making sure that teachers, districts know what's happening. What is the future of this industry?
So we focused on moving away from what we call control into education. So control around controlling device, controlling learner behavior, etc. We monitor and inform. So we've been this big shift away almost from being a product and into a service. I think that's the first thing. We're very, very invested into Microsoft, not exclusively, but they have been really good partners as we've been designing out the system that we've been building. It's quite cutting edge, and they've been very supportive in that experience. So we're working very closely with organizations like that, but not exclusively. We're working with a huge number of different education providers. As a business, we're going to be moving as well away from being just purely a service provider and much more into a partner with schools and districts. We're working with our ministry at the moment, for example, in North Africa, where we're helping them to understand what insights you could actually get out from the systems, not just ours, but from their other systems that they have. And we're becoming a backbone to all those different products and services so we can understand and deliver something of much greater value than we can do in our own independent right. So it's about us coming together with whoever is in that ecosystem already to partner to deliver more to those teachers and to the curriculum leaders. So for us, we're definitely pushing into that space. And again, as I said earlier, uniquely for us, we're looking at the combination of device management, well-being, and sort of curriculum management, because we see that bringing those together into one space is going to be much more impactful as well.
Justin, as we go through the next couple of months, I'd love to have you back on, especially as the world changes, as the educational landscape changes. I know in the country here, we're looking forward to having a new educational system and a new educational leader. And I'm sure that's going to be bringing in a lot of challenges as we go through here. Would love to invite you and Impero back on to talk about what's happening in your country as our country continues to evolve.
Happily.
We've been here talking to Justin Reilly, CEO of Impero Software. Justin, where do we go to learn more about the great things happening at Impero?
www.imperosoftware.com. All our services are on there, and you can find out about us. And we're all over social media, so you only have to Google us and we'll pop up.
And of course, all the links are going to be over on our show notes page. This is episode number 222. And we want to say thank you to Justin and everybody at Impero for coming on today. And on behalf of Impero and everybody here in the TeacherCast Educational Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.
You've been listening to the TeacherCast Educational Network, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter @TeacherCast or online at www.teachercast.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.